I would so like to try. Oh yes, Mr. Armadale, no doubt you meant to do something musical, too, and I dare say you sing very well when you know the words; but to tell you the truth, I always did, and always shall, hate Moore's melodies." Thus, with merciless dexterity of manipulation, did Miss Milroy work that sharpest female weapon of offense, the tongue. And thus she would have used it for some time longer, if Allan had only shown the necessary jealousy, or if Pedgift had only afforded the necessary encouragement. But adverse fortune had decreed that she should select for her victims two men essentially unassailable under existing circumstances. Allan was too innocent of all knowledge of female subtleties and susceptibilities to understand anything except that the charming Neelie was unreasonably out of temper with him without the slightest cause. The wary Pedgift, as became one of the quick-witted youth of the present generation, submitted to female influence, with his eye fixed immovably all the time on his own interests. Many a young man of the past generation, who was no fool, has sacrificed everything for love. Not one young man in 10,000 of the present generation, except the fools, has sacrificed a halfpenny. The daughters of Eve still inherit their mother's merits, and commit their mother's faults. But the sons of Adam in these latter days are men who would have handed the famous apple back with a bow, and a "Thanks, no, it might get me into a scrape." When Allan, surprised and disappointed, moved away out of Miss Milroy's reach to the forward part of the boat, Pedgift Junior rose and followed him. "You're a very nice girl," thought this shrewdly sensible young man, "but a client's a client, and I'm sorry to inform you, miss, it won't do." He set himself at once to rouse Allan's spirits by diverting his attention to a new subject. There was to be a regatta that autumn on one of the boats, and his client's opinion as a yachtsman might be valuable to the committee. "Something new, I should think, to you, sir, in a sailing match on fresh water?" he said, in his most ingratiatory manner. And Allan, instantly interested, answered, "Quite new. Do tell me about it." As for the rest of the party, at the other end of the boat, they were in a fair way to confirm Mrs. Pentcoast's doubt whether the hilarity of the picnic would last the day out. Poor Neelie's natural feeling of irritation under the disappointment which Allan's awkwardness had inflicted on her was now exasperated into silent and settled resentment by her own keen sense of humiliation and defeat. The major had relapsed into his habitually dreamy, absent manner. His mind was turning monotonously with the wheels of his clock. The curate still secluded his indigestion from public view in the innermost recesses of the cabin; and the curate's mother, with a second dose ready at a moment's notice, sat on guard at the door. Women of Mrs. Pentecost's age and character generally enjoy their own bad spirits. "This," sighed the old lady, wagging her head with a smile of sour satisfaction, "is what you call a day's pleasure, is it? Ah, what fools we all were to leave our comfortable homes!" Meanwhile the boat floated smoothly along the windings of the watery labyrinth which lay between the two Broads. The view on either side was now limited to nothing but interminable rows of reeds. Not a sound was heard far or near, not so much as a glimpse of cultivated or inhabited land appeared anywhere. "A trifle dreary hereabouts, Mr. Armadale," said the ever cheerful Pedgift; "but we are just out of it now. Look ahead, sir! Here we are at Hurle Mere." The reeds opened back on the right hand and the left, and the boat glided suddenly into the wide circle of a pool. Round the nearer half of the circle the eternal reeds still fringed the margin of the water. Round the further half the land appeared again, here rolling back from the pool in desolated sand-hills, there rising above it in a sweep of grassy shore. At one point the ground was occupied by a plantation, and at another by the outbuildings of a lonely old red brick house, with a strip of by-road near, that skirted the garden wall and ended at the pool. The sun was sinking in the clear heaven, and the water, where the sun's reflection failed to tinge it, was beginning to look black and cold. The solitude that had been soothing, the silence that had felt like an enchantment on the other Broad, in the day's vigorous prime, was a solitude that saddened here, a silence that struck cold in the stillness and melancholy of the day's decline. The course of the boat was directed across the mere to a creek in the grassy shore. One or two of the little flat-bottomed ponds peculiar to the Broads lay in the creek, and the reed cutters to whom the ponds belonged, surprised at the appearance of strangers, came out, staring silently, from behind an angle of the old garden wall. Not another sign of life was visible anywhere. No pony chaise had been seen by the reed cutters; no stranger, either man or woman, had approached the shores of Hurle that day. Young Pedgift took another look at his watch, and addressed himself to Miss Milroy. "You may or may not see the governess when you get back to Thorpe Ambrose," he said; "but, as the time stands now, you won't see her here. You know best, Mr. Armadale," he added, turning to Allan, "whether your friend is to be depended on to keep his appointment?" "I am certain he is to be depended on," replied Allan, looking about him, in unconcealed disappointment at Midwinter's absence. "Very good," pursued Pedgift Junior. "If we light the fire for our gypsy tea making on the open ground there, your friend may find us out, sir, by the smoke. That's the Indian dodge for picking up a lost man on the prairie, Miss Milroy, and it's pretty nearly wild enough, isn't it, to be a prairie here?" "There are some temptations, principally those of the smaller kind, which it is not in the defensive capacity of female human nature to resist. The temptation to direct the whole force of her influence, as the one young lady of the party, toward the instant overthrow of Allan's arrangement for meeting his friend, was too much for the major's daughter. She turned on the smiling Pedgift with a look which ought to have overwhelmed him. But who ever overwhelmed a solicitor? "I think it's the most lonely, dreary, hideous place I ever saw in my life," said Miss Neelie. "If you insist on making tea here, Mr. Pedgift, don't make any for me. No, I shall stop in the boat; and, though I am absolutely dying with thirst, I shall touch nothing till we get back again to the other Broad." The major opened his lips to remonstrate. To his daughter's infinite delight, Mrs. Pentecost rose from her seat before he could say a word, and, after surveying the whole landward prospect, and seeing nothing in the shape of a vehicle anywhere, asked indignantly whether they were going all the way back again to the place where they had left the carriages in the middle of the day. On ascertaining that this was, in fact, the arrangement proposed, and that, from the nature of the country, the carriages could not have been ordered round to Hurle without, in the first instance, sending them the whole of the way back to Thorpe Ambrose, Mrs. Pentecost, speaking in her son's interests, instantly declared that no earthly power should induce her to be out on the water after dark. "Call me a boat!" cried the old lady, in great agitation. "Wherever there's water, there's a night mist, and wherever there's a night mist, my son Samuel catches cold. Don't talk to me about your moonlight and your tea making. You're all mad! Hi, you two men there!" cried Mrs. Pentecost, hailing the silent reed cutters on shore. "Sixpence apiece for you, if you'll take me and my son back in your boat." Before young Pedgift could interfere, Allan himself settled the difficulty this time, with perfect patience and good temper. "I can't think, Mrs. Pentecost, of your going back in any boat but the boat you have come out in," he said. "There is not the least need, as you and Miss Milroy don't like the place, for anybody to go on shore here but me. I must go on shore. My friend Midwinter never broke his promise to me yet, and I can't consent to leave Hurle as long as there is a chance of his keeping his appointment. But there's not the least reason in the world why I should stand in the way on that account. You have the major and Mr. Pedgift to take care of you, and you can get back to the carriages before dark if you go at once. I will wait here, and give my friend half an hour more, and then I can follow you in one of the reed cutters' boats." "That's the most sensible thing, Mr. Armadale, you've said to day," remarked Mrs. Pentecost, seating herself again in a violent hurry. "Tell them to be quick!" cried the old lady, shaking her fist at the boatmen. "Tell them to be quick!" Allan gave the necessary directions, and stepped on shore. The wary Pedgift, sticking fast to his client, tried to follow. "We can't leave you here alone, sir," he said, protesting eagerly in a whisper. "Let the major take care of the ladies, and let me keep you company at the Mere." "No, no," said Allan, pressing him back. "They're all in low spirits on board. If you want to be of service to me, stop like a